Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Hammond. It's the first time I've been on this podcast with DC Gomez. I'm going to go ahead and jump in to reading before I get nervous. With Charlie and Isaac in tow, Alex followed Fragor and Calcius along the docks on the bayside part of town. Calcius was taking them to the Royal Perch, as he called it. The inconsistent yet frequent creaks of the planks slightly unnerved Alex. She wasn't big on water. She was surprised when the sun was blotted out as they rounded a corner, heading away from the sea. Ahead was a towering structure, easily hundreds of feet tall, with dozens of ropes anchoring it to the various nearby buildings. Its size, however, was only a secondary interest. It was apparent to Alex that the structure was in fact an entire sail ship, a frigate or some other large vessel. Its bow, the front of the ship, was buried in the ground, piercing the deck of the city's expansive pier. The tail end of the ship formed a peak, a large opening in what would most likely have been the officers' quarters. The masts, abnormally long, had been converted to long decks, with several of the racing airships moored to them. The prince beamed with pride. Magnificent, is it not? The team gawked at the bizarre building, and Alex didn't take her eyes from the spectacle when she said, "I'm guessing there's a story behind this." Ooh, Fragor, do tell the story. You tell it so much better than I," said the giddy prince. Fragor took a deep breath. It belonged to the Imperial Navy of the nation that used to rule these lands hundreds of years ago. One day, the Imperial fleet came home to find the empire had collapsed, so they decided to settle the area and live out their days as peaceful traders. They used every ship of what was once one of the largest navies in the known world to construct this city. This tower was their flagship, the Caltesia, for which the city is named. "I love this world," Isaac said, almost drooling. Fragor grinned and continued, "This is where the racers dock their ships. Many years ago, the Royal Perch was constructed at the top, so that royalty and other important figures could have the best view of the whole event. Let's head up." They followed Calcius. Alex looked up at the airships. They were not anything like the airships back on Earth. Rather, they looked like small, old-timey sailing ships. Their envelope, the balloon that holding them aloft, was puffy and uneven. Their hulls were sleek, almost aerodynamic. These were clearly built for speed. She noticed Charlie was just as interested. "How do you think they steer him?" she asked. Alex guessed, probably a combination of control surfaces and those weird dragon things the prince mentioned. "Dragons? Oh, no, the prince interjected. Wyverns. Those beasts are called wyverns. Dragons are far larger and smarter." They ascended a large spiral staircase, and Alex saw Fragor looking over his shoulder now and again. It was obvious he was protective of the prince, but Alex wasn't sure if it was duty, loyalty, or respect. Hoping for any reprieve she could get at this point, Alex had let her guard down, opting to take in the city a bit more. If she stayed on edge all the way to the capital, she would probably go insane. She couldn't see any way that the prince's would-be killers could make it into something called the Royal Perch. That was her hope, at least. Reaching the top of the lengthy staircase, the group was greeted with a cozy lounge. There was a bar and all manner of seats and sofas. Alex chuckled as she mentally compared it to a medieval hotel lobby. What made it different, however, was the expansive crystal-clear window, perfectly positioned to look out over the bay. It was flanked on either side by slimmer stained glass panes, ornate designs depicting the races in bright colors. Alex could see the airship dock clearly from their elevated position. It seemed many of the ships were being repaired, some even modified. At the end of the docks was a pen filled with those wyvern creatures, with only a high fence with a thick netting covering the top. Alex felt like that wasn't the most secure, but then she didn't know anything about wyverns. Alex asked, "Are the races done for the day?" Calcius nodded. "The true ones, yes. There is an informal one that takes place at night, primarily to show off a display of dazzling lights." "Have you always been so interested in the races?" Alex asked. The prince's expression turned somber. "I attended the races every year as a child with my father and mother." It was only at that moment that Alex realized she had never heard Calcius mention his mother. He continued, "It was one of the only times of year that we would all be together. Our holiday away from the hustle and bustle of the capital." Alex didn't want to interrupt his musing, but the wistful look in his eyes betrayed her judgment. "Calcius, if you don't mind me asking, what happened to your mom?" His shoulders slumped slightly, and he closed his eyes. "She simply was no longer here one day. She was very outspoken against the court, even taking on direct threats from them. Truly a fearless woman. He looked directly into her eyes. You quite remind me of her, Miss Alex. Alex smiled. That might have been the first meaningful compliment he had given her, and he had a way of conveying the respect that came with it. You never found out what happened to her? The assumption to this day is that she, how would Frigor put it, disappeared, either kidnapped or taken into hiding, or worse, killed and disposed of. The way he spoke of it, almost casually, carried a numb acceptance of the situation. But whatever the case, she will remain forever gone, I fear. He blinked and turned to face the window. Alex looked past Calcius to Frigor, who was giving her a slight glare, seemingly upset that she had brought any of this up. Maybe Calcius's life hadn't been as cushy as Alex had assumed. It sounded like things were largely out of his control, something she knew would drive herself crazy. Sometimes Alex had a hard time connecting with other people, and part of that was because she often forgot that everyone else had their own struggles. Her conversation with her team, hearing about their lives, fears, and scars, had really brought things into perspective for her. She looked at Charlie and Isaac, both of whom were staring out the window in amazement. Happy as they were now, they had also struggled at times in their own lives. She turned back to the prince. Calcius, that night in the woods. She was interrupted by a whoosh, a loud boom, and a spray of glass shards in every direction. The window had shattered. Alex covered her head with one arm shielding her face. She looked around for the source of the commotion. At the entrance to the lounge stood 5 robed figures wearing strange masks. The one in the front of the group had his hand extended, a faint blue glow coming from within it. Charlie shouted, "More assassins?" The other attackers had the same blue glow, and bolts of energy shot from them. Alex's group narrowly evaded a volley when they all ducked to the ground. "Magic assassins!" Isaac yelled. Fragor leapt forth and flipped one of the room's large dining tables onto its side. "Get behind!" Once everyone had joined him in the makeshift cover, Alex, Charlie, and Isaac drew their weapons. Alex peeked out of the cover and took a shot at the group, but as soon as she pulled the trigger, a glowing green triangle appeared in front of the attackers. Alex's shot impacted a strange barrier, ripples dancing across it before it flickered and faded away. She ducked back down. "Oh yeah, Charlie, we'll win every fight. They'll just have swords." How was I supposed to know there would be wizards with lightning fingers? The words tumbled out of Charlie's mouth. Doesn't matter. We need a way out of here. At that very moment, she saw an airship from the race passing by the window. It was close enough. At least she hoped so. She tried to gauge the distance. "I have a plan. I just hope it's not a dumb one." "That is not even remotely reassuring," the prince shouted as more of the magical bolts whizzed past them. One impacted the table, splintering the wood and breaking open a hole in their cover. "I don't think we have much of a choice right now," Alex said, hoisting herself up from the crouched position. "Come on," she broke into a sprint, and in the biggest leap of her life, jumped the gap from the broken window to the passing airship.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm so excited that you guys are joining us, and I hope you enjoyed that reading as much as I did. If you're new to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. You do not want to miss a single episode. We have new authors with amazing books each week, so you want to stay tuned. And because you're here to see who we have new, we're going to jump in. Hello, Mr. John. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I am so excited you're here. You did great for your reading. I know you were a little nervous, but you did fabulous.
I'd say more than a little bit nervous, but I hope it did okay.
You did great, especially for being the first time you do this in public. So I love it. Nice job.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump in because I have questions about the book. Let's start with what is the premise? What is this book all about? Tell us.
My wife likes to pitch it as Stargate meets Princess Bride. Stargate is a little bit more niche of a sci-fi offering than Star Trek or Star Wars, but the basic premise is that in the near future, there's a United Nations kind of task force that is secretly investigating these portals that are opening all around the Earth, like in the real world, like our world, you know. And our main character, Alex, has the assignment thrust upon her to lead the first team through the only stable portal that they've found that they can actually get through. And on the other side, instead of aliens or whatever Earth people would assume, is instead a fantasy world where they kind of quickly connect the dots that this is where all of Earth's major myths come from, is crossings from this world through the portals into ancient Earth. So it's like we have all sorts of mythology, like Norse mythology is big in the second book that I'm writing right now. We're planning on doing Greek mythology, Slavic mythology, and then working our way around the world as the characters kind of explore it more in the coming books. In the book one, they get involved in the mostly European mythology to start with, and they get involved with a prince who has assassins after him, and they have to help him get back home, basically. There's a lot more to it than that, but the rest of it is spoilers. So I would
Okay.
like people to buy the book.
It's always a fun thing. People do enjoy a good story. What genre would you put this in, or does it have multiple genres?
I say 80% fantasy, 20% sci-fi,
Okay.
because a lot of the protagonists are from a near future sci-fi kind of setting for Earth, but most of it takes place in the fantasy world. And that's the big element, is the clash between those two themes.
Where did this idea come from?
I've always liked the stories of myth kind of interacting with real world stuff. Percy Jackson and Harry Potter and all of those kind of classic YA novels. I would put it under YA, even though I've had probably more adults than kids read it. I'm not sure at this point, just because of people being supportive of my launch. But I would put it pretty firmly in fantasy with a bit of sci-fi focus, especially in the main character. I've always been inspired by those kind of stories, and so I thought it would be really cool if it was the other way around. And again, I like Stargate, which is kind of pure sci-fi with a similar premise. I just love fantasy enough that I wanted to kind of flip that expectation a bit. So the idea of the clash between the real world and myth, and then sci-fi and fantasy, both of those kind of melded together, being similar enough that I started coming up with the premise and refined it a lot more as I actually wrote the book.
How long did it take you to put this book together?
A lot of procrastination. I started in 2020. The actual writing was 2020. Everyone started a novel during the pandemic, right? But I wrote probably 5,000 words in 2020 at most. Across 2020 and 2021, I probably wrote 5,000 words total. Then, and this is the fun part, I got married. I met my now wife, and when we were dating, after about maybe 4 or 5 months of dating, I told her that I was trying to write a book, kind of just in passing, and she finally was like, "Should I read this? Like, can I read it?" And she finally read it one day, and she, how do I put this? She gave a little bit of harsh critique, but it wasn't like well thought out critique yet. And so I felt really bad about it, and she felt really bad about giving it to me. And it kind of formed this now amazing dynamic where she gives amazing feedback, like as close as feedback as you can get to being a writer without actually writing stuff. She understands story structure so well now. We've both done tons of research, but we started working on it together, and I kind of put it on the shelf for half a year ish. Then we got married that next summer in 2022. And we were newlyweds. We came home, and I'm like, well, I'm doing all these odd jobs, but none of them have ever felt right. And I know I can't do them forever, you know. And she said, what about writing? Well, I'd love to do writing as a job. That'd be great. She said, well, then go for it. Just, I'll support you no matter what. Just go for it. And she kind of just kicked me in the pants and said, go write. And across 2022, I wrote a bit, and then 1 year afterwards, we had our anniversary. She said, no, seriously, go for it. And I wrote more than half of the book in the course of a couple months. So, now, to be fair, it's not a
Awesome.
very long book, especially as compared to other fantasy authoring, but around 65,000 words, maybe. Yeah, it's a novel. It counts. I'll take it.
Congratulations on the marriage. Congratulations on the book. That is always very exciting, and just enjoy it. It is a process. It is very fun that you have a very supportive spouse that wants you to succeed and just pushing you forward. So that is awesome.
Oh, I
You
never would have done
mentioned
it
on the
without
books
her.
that is awesome. Huge props to your wife. That is amazing. Question comes up. You mentioned other books. This is a series. How many books are you guys thinking of?
We've got a really thorough, firm plan for 4 books. And then I've got like whispers of a plan for maybe more past that. But the first 4 books would definitely all be part of like the same arc, the same kind of
Okay.
storyline. Anything past that would be kind of just a different story in this with the same characters and setting. 1 through 4 is going to be one long arc. For book 2, I'm 40,000 words in. So depending on how long it ends up being, I'm either 2/3 of the way or almost 2/3 of the way. And I'm hoping to have it done by the end of this year, 2024.
You have a plan. You're excited about it. The series is coming along. What can our listener expect from this book and the characters?
The series as a whole, I've got kind of an odd situation because most people write YA novels, right? And their characters are the age of the presumed reader, right? That's kind of
Mhm.
usually assumed.
Give or
And I've
take.
actually, yeah, give or take. I've had some people say, well, why didn't you write them as teenagers? I'm like, you want me to write an Air Force pilot as a teenager? Like a real world Air Force pilot as a teenager? That doesn't really work. And so I think that it's a good opportunity for younger readers to know that they can relate to and learn from older characters and then have those thoughts and relations follow them into adulthood, right? Because then they can still relate to that memory, right? And so even though I would classify it as YA in terms of how digestible it is and how appropriate it is, I do deal with more serious emotional themes a lot in the writing that I've done. And a lot of big part of that is trauma and personal growth are the main things. And I've had a lot of people say that I have a theme of duty in my book, and I have no idea where that comes from other than like one line that just kind of waxes poetic about it, but it's not like a theme that I intended. But if it's a good theme, then I'll take it. But for what people expect, I like to write funny stuff, goofy stuff. I hope that reading was a good mixture of world building, funny stuff, and emotional stuff and action. Those are my 3 big things: are emotional stuff, humor, and action, and just kind of interspersing those things. I'm trying to get better at the whole world building aspect, but I'm leaning a little bit on the existing mythology.
There's nothing wrong with that. In your journey as an author and publishing and getting yourself out there and start literally promoting your book, what is one thing you learned that you were like, I was not prepared for that?
Well, I learned from one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from the person who's been mentoring me on this is Richard Paul Evans, the author, because he's got a community that me and Mary Flint and James, who have recommended me to the podcast, they're all a part of the same group that he kind of mentors. And the best advice I've gotten from any author was him saying in the leading up to my first book launch was, let yourself have fun. I wish I had done that more in the early days. I was too busy stressing out, worrying about the money aspects, worrying about, is this going to be successful, that I missed out on how amazing it is to have your first launch and how amazing it is to be an author. Because if you're an author, you're cool. That's his words, not mine. But I think it, but I don't know if I see myself as cool yet. But no, that's the best advice I've gotten. And the thing that was most unexpected for me was people want to support authors. They really want to support you if you're an author. It is not considered a deadbeat job by most, good people, and it's like people really want to support authors, and authors should really bask in that in a non-conceited way, but feel cool. You're an author, you did something amazing, you launched it. you know I think that's the best advice I've gotten and the best thing I've learned.
And are you having fun? Is the question.
Oh, I am very much. Yeah. I've got a lot of events lined up for the fall, this one included. I consider this a very big event for me because this is only my 3rd podcast.
Podcasts are great. I usually recommend, especially when you're trying to get connections with your authors and your readers. It's a great way to build that bridge and it's just kind of be able to have it out there. So absolutely. And I'm so happy you joined. So glad Miss Mary told you about it. So it's awesome. As you're getting ready to start books 2, 3, and 4, what is something that has changed in your process that you were not prepared for?
I definitely know what I'm doing a lot more. I've definitely failed forward. I think every person who has alpha or beta read the 2nd book so far has said, John, this is much better than the first one. And that's a lot of family members and friends. So it's not like they're saying the first book is bad, but they're like, John, you've improved. And I think that the biggest thing that I wasn't prepared for was just it snuck up on me, the 2nd book. I started writing it when we were getting into the editing process for book 1 in December of last year. And I was like, I need something to write. I can't just sit here and do nothing while the first book's in editing. So I started writing the 2nd book. But now it's many months later. I'm 40,000 words in. We just the other day started the cover design process for book 2. And I'm like, oh, this is happening again. It's not a fluke. I wrote more than one book. It's not a one-hit wonder, one-time, thing. And it's just snuck up on me that it's real. I was not prepared to kind of feel the momentum that's built in the process. It's a little scary, but it's also really exciting. So I'm glad I got surprised by something exciting.
I'm so glad you're letting yourself enjoy the process. And it's interesting how you say it's like, oh my God, it's happening. I just didn't, accidentally had just one book. So congratulations there. Do you have a date when you're planning to release book 2?
Not a firm date, but as we have editing, we're hoping to have it in content editing. So the final thing before the copy and spell check and all that stuff. We're hoping to have that in editing by December of this year.
Okay.
I asked my editor, are you going to be able to do any of that for, like during Christmas time? She's like, John, I edited 4 books over Christmas last year. I'll be fine. So I'm hoping if it goes about the same timeline as the first book, maybe a little bit faster because we know what we're doing now. I'm hoping about February, March kind of release window, I'd say. We'll probably know a lot better, definitely know a lot better by the end of December. But
That's a good time frame. I am excited for you.
thank you. That'll
So,
be
dear,
2 books in less than a year. So,
that would be awesome. Congratulations. So tell me, dear, what advice would you give an up and coming author?
oh, I get asked this a lot. And it's exciting when I get asked this because it makes me think that I might actually know what I'm doing. Or at least other people think I know what I'm doing. No, my number one advice, this is practice, is find your process. Do not replicate other people's process. Don't try to do it exactly like your favorite author does it. You're a different person. Find your process. If someone else tells you their process, take 10% of it maximum and then gather like 10 different authors, 10%. See if it works for you. Never stop trying new processes. Just find one that works for you. Continue to refine it across your whole lifetime is kind of what my working theory is, because I tried so long to force myself to write the way I was like told to write by every other person. And then I started hearing different things from everyone, from different people, and I thought, okay, I think it's entirely subjective. I think I need to find my process. It's been refining it. So I have a lot of weird writing habits that I won't go into just because we'd be here a while. So
Every author does too. I think it's part of the nature of who we are. And it's creating, as you said, that process that makes sense for you that you
mhm.
can maintain and sustain. So love it. So, dear, it is such a pleasure chatting with you. I need to know, where can our listeners find you? Where they can learn more about you and the books? Do you have a website?
I do. We got real lucky and got johnbhammondauthor.com. That is the URL. It's pretty easy to find. Our Google search results are actually pretty easy to find. We sell it on Amazon. We sell it basically everywhere that you can buy books. And to find us, it's either John B. Hammond, or on a lot of our socials, we're called Writing Book Send Help, which has been fun. TikTok is the main place that we post a lot of content, which has been really fun because we just get to goof off, basically. So
That's very nice. Awesome. Hi, dear. Before you leave us, are you ready for the lightning round?
lightning round. All right, let's go.
Super easy. Don't think too hard on these. Let's see. Pepsi or Coke?
Pepsi or Coke?
Mhm.
Coke all the way. Hardcore.
Okay. Some people tend to be. Okay. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Superhero or villain?
Oh, that's I would go. I could talk about that for a long time, but it's lightning round, so I'll go ahead and say villain.
Okay.
It's easier to
So
have an interesting story with villain. So
most of the
I
time. So the
yeah,
DC or Marvel?
Marvel. Growing up DC, but
Here
now
is a
Marvel.
little. Okay. So he's a little different. Let's see how you do with this one. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I've thought about this as well. It's not a superpower, but I want like an Iron Man suit because I really like flight, and I want an Iron Man suit or maybe an Ant-Man suit. I don't know, but any of the like the techie kind of suits are more the things I'm interested in. The people heroes.
Okay. I like. Dear, it has been a pleasure. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
we got really lucky and got a great cover, and I hope that you guys can see that as somewhere on the podcast. Any and all support is amazing, and it's awesome to be here because this is a form of support. So thank you, DC, for supporting us, me and my wife. It is our book. We call it that. She's just not on the cover as the author, So, but it's our book. So, yeah, find your support network like I have my wife, and in all things, not just in writing.
I love it. Congratulations, dear, and continue to enjoy. Have a blast with the success that the book really continue to publish. If you have any questions or anything, just let me know. Here to support you guys. To our listeners, go ahead, check out the website, check out the book. Make sure you guys can get a copy. Have a blast with this really fun mashup of science fiction and fantasy, and enjoy it. Mr. John, thank you for being with us. A pleasure. And to our listeners, we'll be back next week with another fabulous author. Bye, everyone.